Kusasampo, welcome to Bhutan e-learning program. I am Sipi Parajuli from Mutithang Higher Secondary School, and today our lesson is for Key Stage 4. Before I introduce the topic of my lesson today, I'll show you a picture and you have to tell me what is the topic for today's lesson. So the picture is our Earth, and on our Earth you can see different types of organisms. You will see the plants, you will see animals, you will also see the aquatic animals and many more. So now you have to tell me what is the topic. Yes, the topic is biodiversity. So today we are going to talk about biodiversity and its levels. By the end of today's lesson, you may be able to explain biodiversity, relate the significance of biodiversity to our life, explain biodiversity conservation strategies in Bhutan. And now, again, one more question for you. Since we are talking about biodiversity, this is a photograph of one part of our country. Now, my question is, why is our country considered to be one of the hotspots of biodiversity? So, at the end of this lesson, you will be able to give the correct answer. And in between, you can think about this question. So now, we have been hearing about this biodiversity from so many people. What is biodiversity? So in the first picture which I showed it to you, you have seen that there is our Earth and all different living organisms. So all these living organisms which are present on our Earth, along with their ecosystem, we call it as biodiversity. So this is the definition for biodiversity. It is also called as biological diversity, and it is the sum of all the different species of living organism, including the various ecosystems in which they live in. For example, this is a picture showing a particular type of ecosystem. In this ecosystem, you will find different types of plants, you will find insects, you will find smaller animals, and all this together forms the ecosystem, and this ecosystem is a part of biodiversity. Now, we know what is meant by biodiversity. So why study biodiversity? Why is it important for us to learn about biodiversity? Because it is the source of economic security for future generations. When we say economic security, it mainly talks about money. So from the natural resources, or let us say from the biodiversity, we are getting economic security. Another reason why we have to study biodiversity is it is the source of ecological security for our future generation. In short, we can say that the well-being and survival of human beings depend on millions of plants, animals, and microorganisms. So, we can also say all the human beings, we depend on biodiversity for our survival. Now, in the next session, we are going to talk about the types of biodiversity. So mainly there are 3 different types of biodiversity. Now we'll carry out a short activity. So in which you have to look at the photographs which I am going to show it to you, and then at the end of this photographs you have to tell me which type of biodiversity do the photographs represent. So what you have to do is observe the pictures carefully. So the first picture is about a group of students. The second picture is a team of horses. The third picture shows different kinds of pumpkins. The colors are different, the shapes they are different, and the fourth picture shows us different colored maize. Now, what can you say about these pictures? So these pictures are talking about the first type of biodiversity, and it is genetic diversity. So genetic diversity is the variation of genes within species. Genes give genetic variation within a population or varieties within one species. The example, there is variation of people's face due to different genes present within them. So this example you can even see in your own family members. You do not look exactly like your father or your mother. There is some small difference present, and that difference, it is genetic variation. Now, to move on to the second type of biodiversity, again I will be showing you some pictures, and you have to find out which type of biodiversity does it represent. Observe the pictures carefully. The first picture is showing different types of animals. You will find the birds, you will find reptiles, you will find aquatic animals, you will find plants. So there are so many different types of species in this picture. Similarly, the second picture, you will find different animals, birds, mammals, aquatic animals. Now, the third picture, this is showing a beautiful garden where you will find different species of plants. Now, what can you say about these pictures? Or which type of biodiversity does it represent? And yes, the answer is species diversity. So species diversity refers to variety of species within a region. It refers to abundance of different animals, plants, and microbial species. Now, let us move on to the third type of biodiversity. So, just like before, you will be observing the pictures, and then you will be concluding which type of biodiversity does it represent. The first picture is aquatic ecosystem, where you will see different types of living organisms in water. Then second picture, it is for the forest ecosystem. Different types of plants in these pictures. Then third one is mountain ecosystem. The fourth picture is for desert ecosystem. Again the same question. What can you say about these pictures, or which type of biodiversity does it represent? So, the answer is ecosystem diversity. So, ecosystem diversity, it refers to different kinds of ecosystem. For example, it can be the mountain ecosystem, it can be the river ecosystem, it can be the forest ecosystem, and many more. And each of these ecosystem provides different kind of habitats or living plants. So, as you have seen earlier, the living organisms or the plants and animals, they are not same in each of this ecosystem. So, there is diversity in the ecosystem itself. Okay. So, after learning about the different types of biodiversity, we are going to focus on the significance of biodiversity. So, the first significance of biodiversity is it provides us with clean air, fresh water, diverse food products, timber, fuel, etc. So, you can see here we are obtaining so many products from the biodiversity. The second significance of biodiversity, it helps to maintain the ecological balance necessary for all life forms. So, when we talk about ecological balance, it is obtained by making use of all the sustainable development goals. The third significance of biodiversity, it provides raw materials for plants and animal breeding. When we talk about raw materials, it mainly means the food, the space which are required for breeding. Then the fourth and the last significance of biodiversity, it provides social benefits like recreation, tourism, cultural values, educational values, and many more. Now, after learning about biodiversity, the significance of biodiversity, let us talk a little bit about Bhutan's biodiversity. So, I have some information on Bhutan's biodiversity. Bhutan's biodiversity has about 5,500 species of plants, 200 species of mammals, 770 species of birds, and approximately 900 species of butterflies. Then 55 species of snakes, 19 species of lizards. So, now we can answer the first question which I asked you previously. Why is Bhutan considered to be one of the hotspots of biodiversity? So, this is the particular reason we have such a rich natural resources. Okay. After the information on Bhutan's biodiversity, it is not fixed that biodiversity remains like that. There are chances that we might lose the biodiversity. The reason why we are losing our biodiversity is due to human activities. Now, what happens when we lose biodiversity? The human activities lead to biodiversity loss. Biodiversity loss leads to disappearance of species. Disappearance of species leads to extinction. So, many living organisms, they are disappearing from the face of the earth because of human activities, and this is called as biodiversity loss. So, here I will give you some examples of the extinct species. Examples are the dinosaurs, mammoth. And now, what are the causes of biodiversity loss? There are many reasons. So let us look at those reasons one by one. The first reason is climate change. If there is climate change, then some of the living organisms, they are not able to adapt to the particular climate change, and as a result they die. So these will lead to biodiversity loss. The second cause is habitat fragmentation. If we divide the ecosystem and some organisms which are living in that particular organism will move away. So this also causes biodiversity loss. Next cause is pollution. So due to pollution also there can be biodiversity loss. And introduction of exotic species. When we introduce new species in a particular ecosystem, then it will start dominating that particular ecosystem, and the naturally occurring species of that ecosystem will become less. So introduction of exotic species can also be one of the cause of biodiversity loss. Overexploitation. If we overexploit our natural resources, then it can lead to biodiversity loss. Extinction of species obviously leads to biodiversity loss. Hunting. Hunting and poaching can also lead to biodiversity loss. Even the overuse of agrochemicals, the pesticides which are being used in the agricultural fields, it will damage the naturally occurring organisms which are present in that particular field. So this can also lead to biodiversity loss. Habitat destruction. So due to constructions, industrialization, when an ecosystem gets destroyed, then it will lead to biodiversity loss. So these are all the causes of biodiversity loss. And when there is biodiversity loss, then the number of living organisms in the particular ecosystem, it becomes limited. And when it becomes limited, after some time there are chances that it becomes extinct. So these limited number of species surviving in a particular environment, we call them as the endangered species. And Bhutan holds some of the globally threatened species such as the Bengal tiger, red panda, takin, golden langur, black-necked crane, and white-bellied heron. So these are the pictures of some of the endangered species which are found in Bhutan. Then the endangered birds of Bhutan, black-necked crane and the white-bellied heron. So in order to avoid the biodiversity loss, what are the conservation strategies being practiced in Bhutan? There are so many conservation strategies being implemented by the Royal Government of Bhutan, but here today we are going to discuss only two important conservation strategies. They are the in situ conservation and the ex situ conservation. So first, let us look at the in situ conservation. In situ conservation, it is the conservation of wild animals and plants in their natural habitat. So examples are Jimmy Dorji National Park, the Sacred Forest and Lakes, Royal Manas National Park. So these are the in situ conservation which is happening in Bhutan. The second one is ex situ conservation. It is the conservation of plants and animals in locations outside their natural habitat. Examples are botanical garden, the zoos, and even the seed banks. In the seed banks, the seeds are stored at very low temperature in order to preserve the genes of the seed. So these are the examples of the ex situ conservation. Okay, now we have reached the end of the lesson. So let's go through the lesson once again briefly. So we learned today a rich biodiversity reflects a healthy ecosystem. Many conservation strategies are being implemented by Royal Government of Bhutan. Environmental conservation is strongly enshrined in our constitution and other acts. And most important, each one of us is responsible for the sustainable use of our natural resources. So we should not leave it only to the government to carry out the conservation strategies. We have to do it ourselves. We are responsible for it. And some questions for you to explore during your free time. You can make a note on the loss of biodiversity around you and provide reasons for the loss of biodiversity. What do you think will happen if population of tigers decrease suddenly in Bhutan? What do you think will happen if a species of catfish is introduced in Thimphu River? So these are the questions which you can explore during your free time. So with this, we have come to an end of our lesson today. Thank you for watching the lesson and see you in the next lesson.